Welcome to Mr. Orr's Flip Classroom. Today, let's talk about essentials when interviewing. This slideshow was originally published by the University of Southern Illinois at Edwardsville. It's been adapted by Mr. Orr. Before the interview, first, make sure you research the potential employer or organization with which you're interviewing. Review the job description, mission statement, any other information to make sure you're able to match your experience and education with the requirements of that particular role or opportunity. Prepare a 1 to 2 minute script about yourself in advance in response to any kind of question or prompt, such as tell me a little bit about yourself. And make sure you have the appropriate interview attire. For men and males, if possible, wear a suit to the interview. Belt and shoes should be the same color. Avoid ties, elaborate patterns, or too many colors. You don't want to be distracting. If you are going to wear jewelry, most recommend a ring and or a watch. Pretty much that's it for jewelry. Again, these are recommendations. It's not a matter of requirements. It's a matter of present yourself in a way that helps you stand out from the average individual who has some other characteristics in common with you. Also, from head to toe, make sure you're well groomed and shoes should be polished. Make sure you look the part as opposed to someone who just kind of tumbled out of bed and went to the interview. Simple question is not so much which one's better or more attractive or who's more qualified. It's a matter of question of just how each individual is perceived based on appearance, in particular when it comes to clothing. For women, sometimes, again in a more formal setting in particular, a suit or dress may be preferable. Skirts might meet at the top of the knee or be longer. Amount of jewelry should be minimized. Makeup should be light and avoid perfumes and scented powders. Especially these days, you're never going to be quite sure whether or not an individual is interviewing you is hypersensitive to a particular stimulus, such as smell. Gentlemen, that applies to you too as far as body sprays and the like. Same question here. Which one seems more ready for an interview? It's not a matter which one's more attractive, more appealing. It's a matter of which one looks like they're more in interest of getting a job. For starting the interview itself, make sure you arrive 10 to 15 minutes before the start of the interview. Greet the interviewer with a firm handshake. That's not a Adrian Peterson death grip kind of handshake, but it is one that indicates you're firm and confident. Even if you don't necessarily like those or you don't necessarily even like physical contact, you need to have a firm and solid handshake. Grip fully into the hand, thumb to thumb lock, and if you're at all unsure or concerned about having a sweaty palm, the simple trick is, right before you shake someone's hand, whether you're standing up or sitting down, slide your palm of your right hand along the side of your leg or your hip as you bring your arm up, and that will wipe off the moisture from the palm of your hand. Maintain good eye contact and posture. Make sure you do look someone in the eye, especially when saying the name, because it helps them to remember if you actually say the name and they hear it while looking you in the eye. And your posture. It doesn't just include when you're standing there or when you're walking in. It includes when you sit down. Even if a chair, for example, has a back to it, you might want to sit up just a little bit forward of the back of the chair so you sit up properly on your own, under your own power. You don't want to look like you are leaning back too far in the chair and therefore give the perception that perhaps you're a little too relaxed in that context. As far as crossing or folding legs, we recommend that you keep your knees either even with your feet shoulder width apart or a little bit closer than that. If you do cross legs, be mindful of the fact whether or not you're someone who bounces a leg or twists an ankle while sitting there. It might give the appearance of being nervous. Or some of you who get lost in that might actually accidentally or unwittingly have your foot fall asleep, which makes it hard to stand up and walk out of there confidently. Also make sure that your attitude and your appearance, your behavior, your facial expressions are energetic and enthusiastic. You want this and you want to proceed positively. Speak clearly and be articulate in what you're saying and articulate your words themselves as you speak them. All right. Here's some standard interviewing questions. Remember, before answering any questions, that one of the most important and simple things to do is make sure you actually pause. No one's requiring that you actually have to respond to it immediately at the conclusion of someone finishing the last word of the question. Give yourself a moment to pause and think before you give your response. Some people even bring in a piece of paper, a small notepad, and a pencil or pen, and they actually will write things down. For some, it gives them a chance to remember multiple parts of a 2 or 3 part question. For others, it gives them a chance to actually just make sure they know the right spelling of the name of an individual, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. Others, the ability to have that there just gives their hands something to do rather than looking nervous and fidgeting. As for the questions themselves, as you can see on the screen, these are pretty standard questions. Make sure you definitely know how to articulate your one or top three greatest strengths, the things that you would bring to that particular position, to that organization, what you do best, what people often say about you. There are many ways of phrasing these questions, but most of these questions are very similar. The third bullet here, one area of growth, might be also related as a weakness or one challenge you face or something you'd like to improve about yourself. But it's still the same question and the response doesn't change that much. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Besides, especially for those of you who are early in high school, that you see yourself in college, but say a little bit more about that. What kind of things you'll be doing in college as opposed to simply waking up, going to class, and coming back to your dorm room or to your apartment. Also talking about long-term plans, as well as your motivation. Why have you chosen this particular company or opportunity to apply? There's also some things that are not just about the job itself or about you, but they're more about behavior, response, previous experience kind of questions. Some of the examples are, how would you describe your ability to blank? Examples are learn quickly or apply criticism. You might be asked to describe a time in your life when, or time in your life which demonstrates some aspect or characteristic or quality of yourself. You might be asked to give an example of something, or tell about your skills, communication skills, computer skills, conflict management skills, retail experience, that sort of thing. Also might be asked about your previous experiences and what you learned or gained from them, or challenges you faced in the past and how you've overcome them or how you learn from them yet again. One of the last things when you get to the end of the interview, typically you're asked, do you have any questions for me? Meaning, do you have questions for the interviewer or for the organization? Never ever respond with, no, I don't have any. Simple questions, if you're ever in doubt, say, ask them, what is the timetable for the remainder of the hiring process? When do you plan on making a decision? When should I expect to hear from you? You also can ask things like, are there any fees? Are there any uniforms or things like that once you're hired, those get taken out of your first paycheck? Nothing like looking forward to your first opportunity to get formally paid for your first job and being frustrated because it's lower than you thought it would be because it took out 2 hours of pay, for example, for dues, for fees, for a uniform, for tools and materials you need to work that job. You never know. It's a good time to ask. You can also ask what kind of training you'll receive. You can also ask if the position is a summer-only job. Is it something that you could have a chance to work throughout the course of the next school year? Is it something where there are a lot of applicants? Typically, you don't worry yourself too much about who else is applying for the job. You're focused on yourself. And afterwards, make sure that you prepare a thank you, as we'll talk about in a moment here. Thank yous are often our best handwritten. Even if you're at poor handwriting, like a certain person named Mr. Orth, you might type part of that and then just hand sign that particular thank you. The key is make sure that you realize once the last question has been asked, the interview is not over. To the point you've left the room and that person is no longer in your presence who's interviewed you, make sure you actually show the best composure, best side of yourself. Also, be mindful of the fact that just because you were asked for the interview doesn't mean it's an individual interview. It could be a pair interview or a group interview. There could be one person interviewing you or an entire panel. You could be asked to share something, present something, or model something. They could be asked for you to role play. Whatever happens, just go with it. If you want the job, you want that scholarship, want to get that college or university, you go with it unless you feel like what you're being asked to do is unethical or unsafe. Now for the letter of appreciation. Sometimes this is referred to as a thank you note, and you can go ahead and type up a full letter and make this more detailed and thorough, and there's some really good examples online. However, for most people, the handwritten thank you note is a far better choice and a far more timely option as well. First of all, what's the point of showing gratitude after you had the chance to interview? What's the point? Well, first of all, gratitude shows you have the humility to realize that no one owes you the opportunity. It's not yours by right or entitlement. One of the best ways to show that you're not part of a stereotype, particularly that of a young person or teenager, is that you appreciate everything someone has the opportunity or even might do for you. You take nothing for granted. And if you do show gratitude, the worst case scenario is your thank you that you gave ends up in the trash or recycling. Best case scenario, the person who interviewed you thinks even more highly of you. You improve their impression of what you are and what you can do. Now, the idea for the 4-part thank you comes from another concept of the 4-part apology that I learned from my wife. The 4-part apology has 4 pieces to it, shockingly. First is the direct expression. I'm sorry for blank. Whatever that action is that you took, you own that and you express that directly, and you start with that so they know where you're coming from and what the focus of the communication is about. Then after that, you detail your understanding. I know that action, I know that thing I did was wrong because blank. And so you understand where they're coming from, you understand how it affected the emotions, the perception of the person who was wronged. But you not just say, I'm sorry, period, and that's it. The 4-part apology goes far beyond simply saying, I want you to let it go and not hold it against me, or because I've said I'm sorry, you can't be upset anymore. The next part of the apology is a forward focus. In the future, I will. It's a change statement. What are you going to do differently because you understand that what you did was wrong and that you hurt or offended someone? The final part is requesting a response. You close the apology by asking for something from the person you've wronged. Will you forgive me? The person could still say no, but in a sense here, it's not about what you can do to make it up to them. The point is you've owned the experience of the accident, the incident, your actions. You understand clearly why it was wrong. You've indicated you want to change. Don't say always, I will never. Those are hard to follow through. It's what you will do. And the word try, I'm not going to leave it out of there because if their feelings are hurt, if they're already offended, I will try doesn't necessarily indicate what you will do, as Yoda once said. The 4-part apology is very similar to the 4-part thank you. Again, the parts are the same. Direct expression. Thank you for blank. Thank you for this interview. Thank you for this opportunity to apply for the job. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. Detailed understanding. I appreciated it. I appreciated that meeting, that interview, that opportunity because, again, it's not just saying thank you and that's it and you're good enough. It's a matter of really understanding and demonstrating what happened. Oftentimes you give specific details, particularly from an interview, so that indicates that you actually didn't just use a form letter or something you found online. A forward focus. Once again, there's a future piece to thank you. I look forward to paying this forward to someone else. I look forward to paying you back. I look forward to rewarding your faith in me. And response request. Give that person on the other end of things, receiving the thank you, an action point. For example, please let me know if I can be of more help to you. Please let me know if you have any more questions. Please let me know if another opening comes up. But give them an action point for that. An example would be, thank you, Mr. Benson, thank you for the chance to interview with you today. I especially appreciated the question about how this position could fit into my long-term goals. I look forward to the opportunity to contribute to your business. Please contact me if you have any additional questions I can answer for you. Sincerely, handwritten signature, and possibly beneath the handwritten signature, you might have a printed version of your name, so it's clear. Signatures, as we all know, aren't always legible writing. For the thank you note itself, make sure before the interview, before you show up to the interview, write your thank you note, and you can use a regular piece of paper, such as a piece of computer or printer paper, so it's plain. You might choose to buy an actual thank you note, go to a dollar type store, a discount store, and get an inexpensive pack of thank you notes with envelopes, and you can use those repeatedly, especially very generic ones, such as ones that are kind of a tan or manila colored. In the thank you note, before you even interview, write the first full sentence, the start of the second sentence, give some space, then the second paragraph and the closing. Leave open the greeting, such as the names, because you're not necessarily sure which person or persons you'll be interviewing with, as well as leave room at the end of the first paragraph to finish your response and ideas. The follow-through from the thank you. During the interview, write down the names of those interviewing you. Again, see previous note about having a notepad or pencil with it. Make sure they spell names correctly. Nothing offends people more than mispronouncing or misspelling their names. After the interview, but before you leave the premises, before you leave the actual store. Now, if you need, because there's not much of a place to sit down there, perhaps you go out to the parking lot or to a bench nearby and then finish the thank you and then return in a few minutes. If you have to return the next day because they close the business after you leave the interview, so be it. Use the matching pen you brought with you. So whatever you wrote the first time out, the first part of the thank you, you have the same pen, if not 2 pens of the same type in case the first one runs out. Finish the note, finish the thoughts, finish that first and second paragraph. Anything else you can add to make it more thorough. Write the names of the interviewers on the envelope and hand deliver the note to the front desk or someone who could give it to the person who interviewed you. It's actually not ideal to hand it directly to the person who interviewed you, but it's not a bad idea if you had no other options. Remember, gratitude shows the best side of yourself, that you're humble, that you're ready to learn, that you recognize that you're not in charge of everything, you're not in control. If you do these things, hopefully, you'll get a call back or an email that indicates you got the job. And even if they do in fact offer you the job on the spot, still write a thank you. You can never have too many people thinking positively of you for the person you are, not the person you necessarily pretend to be. Be yourself, and don't worry about the rest. Good hunting.